Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session, Cultural Awareness, Teacher Agency Leadership, and Equity-Driven Professional Learning. Uh, my name is Katie Lewis. I'm a professor at York College, Pennsylvania, and tonight we're here with Dr. Angela Novak from East Carolina University. She's my research partner and partner in crime and all sorts of fun things. And tonight we're going to talk to you about our research and how hopefully you can take some of this away with you and look into your own programs to see maybe you can take some of our knowledge and apply it there. So to start us off, we're going to talk about that we know in gifted education that there are disparities, right? We know that when we think about gifted kids, there's the image that pops into your mind. Maybe it's this young man here, he's super excited about all things, but he's also very white, very one typical picture. But we know that there is giftedness across cultures and that giftedness presents differently across different cultures, and that there is definitely a gap in identification and retention of our culturally, linguistically, economically diverse gifted learning. NAGC has posted a position statement charging educators, policymakers, and researchers to examine all these aspects of gifted programs to specifically look at the underrepresentation of our students in them. So when we think about gifted learners, there are some prior knowledge assumptions. So first, we know that gifted youth do not always exhibit the stereotypical characteristics of giftedness. That culture does indeed play a large role in how giftedness manifests. We also know that in school districts that many times teachers are the gatekeepers to gifted programs, whether they are referring or not referring students for screening, whether or not their recommendations or checklists within the identification process. We also know that there's current research out there that recommends things that we can do to try and correct for these issues in identification and retention of gifted learners. And so one of the biggest things we can do is to provide targeted professional learning to our educators. And that this is critical in changing mindsets and changing beliefs, specifically when we're looking at issues of equity. But we need to reflect it ourselves at our own bias that may exist. And then we also need to think about how does this come into play in my students' lives. But also, once we have identified our students into our gifted programs, what strategies do we have available to support our students? When we look at professional learning as a field and we think about best practice, we know that professional learning has to be purposely planned. It needs to follow research-based practices, and then it does have a potential to make a significant impact on our students. Not only the recognition of these students, but the referrals to them to gifted programs and their retention in our gifted programs. And so based on these things, Angela and I have been researching this for quite a long time, thinking about professional learning and the importance of it for our gifted students. And so we started looking at teachers and wondering how and why. And so we started with our first sort of nose into it, thinking about how influential are teachers and their perceptions on students. And we found that teachers are not prepared to work with gifted students from across different cultures. And so we've evolved our theories and we've published articles, but also chapters. And we actually have a book that came out in 2022 with our professional learning plan that's research-based, empowering gifted educators as change agents. But tonight we're going to focus mostly on our research studies that are coming out this fall in the Journal for the Education of the Gifted, Perceptions of a Gifted Coordinator on the University District Collaboration, Providing Culturally Responsive Gifted Professional Learning, a phase analysis of our 4-zone equity-driven. Angela's going to start us off talking about what the study was all about.
Right, thank you, Katie. And so the title that Katie read to you, it said a phased analysis, and that's because the study was actually divided into a couple of different articles. And so the study objectives are actually to explore the impact of targeted sustained professional learning on gifted resource teachers' level of cultural awareness, as well as to serve as a validation study of a theoretical model of equity-driven professional learning. And so that was the larger study. And we used a mixed methods approach to meet these objectives. And we had an initial sample of gifted resource teachers. And then throughout the course of the study, we decided, along with agreement with our IRB and agreement with the members of the study, most particularly the gifted coordinator who served as an interview participant, to add on a single study case study design and to add on an interview. And so we, in this particular study, we actually had a single study, as I said, case study design to look at these particular research questions. And that were, what challenges did the gifted coordinator face when implementing a university district collaborative PLE, or professional learning experience, for teachers of gifted students? And in this particular case, it was the resource teachers. And then what insights and understandings did the gifted coordinator observe as a result of the university district collaborative professional learning experience? And so we used a critical paradigm. And so within that, we had a goal of, throughout the course of our research design, enacting change, making change. And that's because our research design was using professional learning experiences to drive change, to drive critical change through the course of these PLEs, these professional learning experiences. And so we use this critical paradigm throughout it, throughout this mixed methods with the professional learning experiences, with the full sample in the mixed methods design experiences, to really look at this whole experience of professional learning as a goal of driving critical change through this experience. And then this subsection, this data for this particular paper was culled from this this larger study.
So for the larger study, as well as for this smaller one, we were looking at the 4-zone equity-driven professional learning model. So if we look at our model here, it's built on the theoretical frameworks of culturally responsive professional learning, equity, literacy, and the funds of knowledge. It's grounded in this research, and it's important to note that the research is pulling both from the field of giftedness, but also from the general professional learning and best practices and equity literacies. With the model, there are 4 zones. Each of the zones are designed so that you can move forward and backwards within them based on the needs of the participants within your PLE. Zone 1 focuses on increasing the educator's understanding of cultural norms and equity. When we think about Zone 1, the focus is really first on who I am and what are my understandings of culture. It's really important that teachers and educators know who they are and what their culture is, because when you come into the classroom and you're working with students, your beliefs and misconceptions do come into play. And so teachers need to have some time to reflect and learn about themselves before they're ready to dive deeper into other cultures. After Zone 1, this is when we move into Zone 2. In Zone 2, the focus now shifts to understanding the characteristics of gifted marginalized students. So now that we've learned about ourselves and our understandings of culture, we're going to now think about the culture of our students in our school. And it's really important to narrow the focus to those within your district so that you're not generalizing. You are able to focus on the student population that you are working with. but understanding how your views of culture and their views of culture, how they come together and interplay. And so when you have students come into your classroom from different cultures, how does that impact their education, their views of education? But also, how does that impact the manifestation of giftedness? Um, and we know that culture is really, really important to these views. From here, we have zone 3, which is often where school districts tend to drop off. Districts are really good at getting students to be identified and referred into gifted programs, but then we forget about them once we've already identified them. So zone 3 here is focusing on increasing our classroom support for the educators and the gifted marginalized students. We know that our gifted marginalized students need support once they're in the gifted program so that they can be successful. So whether it's mentors, peer support, things like that. But it's also really important that educators also feel supported as they are making modifications to their curriculum, because we cannot teach our gifted curriculum the same way to all of our students. We need to be able to modify, be responsive, and adjust. And so teachers do need some support in this. Zone 4 addresses the critical piece of involving our partnerships with parents in the community. This is a key element to the success. We often talk about the triangle education, whereas the teacher, the student, and the parent. And so in Zone 4, it's talking about how do we bring in the community and learn about the cultures in a partnership where both entities are benefiting from the within these zones, as we move forward and backwards, what is going to happen is in this iterative process, we're going to see a change in the educators' perceptions of inequalities and equities in our schools. And then because of these changes in the teachers' perceptions, there's going to be a positive change in the marginalized gifted student populations. And so these zones, this model is what the research study is based on as we were validating the model. And as we have done this over time, there have been some evolutions to the model. Things have changed slightly based off of the research, as all research does. So in this particular study that we're going to be talking about, we focused on looking at the cultural awareness within the teachers participating in the professional learning experience. And these teachers went through a professional program that was designed by Dr. Angela and myself in cooperation and coordination with the school district. The planning went in advance. We started many months before the scheduled professional learning was to occur. But then as all things happen, the various things caused the plan to not be implemented quite the way we wanted. And so we focused on, as Angela said, we had to shift gears and talk to add in the interview with the coordinator because that had very important information for us to research, to find out. And I think some of these findings are going to be really interesting for you.
So what we looked at in terms of the themes and what guided in terms of our theoretical framework for the study is what you see on this screen, which is Dempster's theoretical model of professional development. And a quick note in terms of the terminology here, we use professional learning or PLE, or professional learning experiences, throughout the course of the paper and the study. The terminology here, Dempster's theoretical model of professional development, is his model, and so we don't change the term. But when he talks about professional development, the characteristics of professional learning are what he's talking about in terms of the descriptions. The terminology he uses is professional development, and I think it can be partially due to the year of its the original publishing of the model of 2001 was before there was a significant shift in terms of the language to professional learning. Also, a language shift itself in terms of vernacular. Dempster publishes in Australia, and so that the shift may not have really it is actually a couple of people who publish right now in Australia do publish either professional learning or professional development, but again in 2001, perhaps not as well back then, and it is not quite as frequently now to publish as professional learning. So it just for the most part, when we talk about it, we do use professional learning just as a note on that term. But so this is his model. And so when we talk through, and we do go into in much greater detail, discussing the model itself, but due to, sorry, I'm looking at the time, due to the time in terms of our 30-minute session, we're really just going to talk about the themes sort of with this as a backdrop and sort of go through the model as we talk about the themes. And so 5 main themes emerged from the study, and we used open and axial, open first and then axial coding, looking for themes. So we didn't use a priori coding with these in mind, with these terms in mind. It was pure open coding and then axial coding. And then when we went back and looked at the themes that emerged, we saw the themes match up to the model. So it wasn't a priori with this model in mind. And so the 5 main themes just happened, and we saw them kind of align with the model. And so when we looked at the first theme, and it was that the system posed a challenge to ongoing professional learning due to the lack of access. So it was that a system based. And so you can see on the 2 sides of the model, there's either a people focus or a system focus. And so the first thing was that system pose a challenge, and it was due to a lack of access. And so when we saw that, an example quote was, "The system hasn't been ready." So there are several things, but it boils down to, as a whole, we weren't there yet. And so that's an example of that system focus. Another quote is, "It's going to depend by campus." I call it states right or campus rights. They get to choose what they're going to focus on. So I have one campus where I know they want to focus on 3rd grade. I have another campus where they're like, anything K-3, please feel free. We'll be setting campus improvement goals with them. And so a lot of this theme had to do with whether or not the campus, the system, felt that they were ready, and that prohibited the goal of the coordinator, the gifted resource teacher, being able to facilitate professional learning. One of the main goals of this professional learning experience was the gifted resource teacher, the GRT, to turnkey the training back to the district. The second theme was change was a challenge due to the individual's lack of readiness to act, to learn, and for change as a whole. So this changes from that systems focus to a people's focus. So back on the other side of the of Dempster's model, you can see that people's focus. And so it had nothing to do with knowledge. It had to do with their own feelings about being a professional developer. Even if I'm comfortable in my craft, I didn't sign up for doing that. And in that quote, the gifted coordinator was sort of saying, this is what their GRTs were saying, was even if I'm comfortable in my craft, I didn't sign up for doing that. And then another quote example, "I really think that some who retired may have been inspired to retire by the fact that they were going to be expected to provide professional learning of a variety. So I don't think it was a comfort level and sharing what you guys provided to us. It was a lot of other things I didn't see coming." So again, there was a reluctance in terms of this people focus, in terms of where there was a lack of readiness. The third theme was there was direct systemic outcomes from the provided professional learning on the gifted program. So this gets to sort of the bottom and the top areas of the model. And so reproduction is sort of status quo. The professional learning is not going to change anything. It's just going to leave everything as it is. We're just going to reproduce. We're just going to keep everything the way it is. The professional learning is just going to keep everything. It's just going to reteach what's already happening in the system. The top level is reconstruction. This is, we know that there's issues in potentially the people, potentially the system. And so what we need to do is rebuild. We need to rebuild, we need to transform, we need to restructure whatever it is that's going on. And for this, I really think about the abolitionist teaching movement, the whole take it down, rebuild it from the ground up idea of, and some people say it's not that the system is broken, it's that the system needs to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. Sort of that idea is this reconstruction piece. And so this is the idea here of what those bottom, sorry, I'm pointing to it and you guys can't see what I'm pointing to, this bottom and top here of reproduction and reconstruction. So the system or the people is where the focus is in terms of, is it a structural or a systemic or more of a people? And reproduction is, are we doing the same old in terms of the what our focus is, or are we building and restructuring? And so in terms of some sample quotes, I think we need some guiding documents and some forms. It makes it tangible. I have something to take with me and go back to. Or so we'll definitely have to have a module that we push out to them that they can use. And the module usually will include a short PowerPoint that they can show and then some notes so that they can have it scripted so they can practice, because we're going to scaffold for them. Some won't need that model, some will. So this idea that we're going to create something, do things so they can, so they, meaning the gifted resource teachers, can take it with them and go, so that this turnkey professional learning will be effective. And it's not just reproducing what was already happening. It's new, it's changing, and it's not whatever they want it to be, but it's with this consistent messaging of what's new and what's going to be taken out to them. Another new thing that we brought from our training was co-teaching. And so that's one thing that the gifted coordinator remarked on. The co-teaching is amazing though, because I learn more about what's going on in Gen Ed and have more respect for you. You get to see lesson writing modeled with PLC question 4 being addressed. And then we reflect on the backside and you learn more about your kids. And so that was something that was brought in during the training that we did, that the gifted coordinator was able to see in action that was really transformational on a people focus that they really wanted to see in action. And so that was a direct, it was slightly people because they saw it with people, but also systemic because they're like, this is something in action that we're going to put into place. The next theme was the professional learning sessions directly impacted perceptions of teacher knowledge and had outcomes related to students and teachers. And so with this one, going through the study with you guys highlighted some other things going on. And so it's almost like collateral damage. I think we learned a lot, and I think it helped us to get ready for the next phase. It may accomplish what we had hoped would happen this year. We just didn't have the structures in place. I think the systems weren't placed to support having it happen yet, but a lot of shifts have happened since then. And I would like to think our learning from working together has helped inform some of the decisions we've made in adjusting for next year. She then emphasized, I wouldn't like to think it, I know it happened. So again, it impacted the perceptions and the knowledge, and then really helped think about it on a systems level. And then the last theme was several different change agents were recognized as contributing to challenges, but also to future potential positive outcomes. And a sample quote from there. I've just not been able to move the needle as far as I wanted to because the campuses didn't feel an urgency to allow it. But now PLC question 4, and when they refer to PLC question, these are Dufour, Eaker and Menes, or Dufour et al. PLC questions. But now PLC question 4 is out there, and that's what we hear all the time, is that question 3 and 4. And another quote, my teachers at this level have not really had to be responsible for professional learning on the campuses, and that's all changing next year. There is an added expectation that they are going to provide professional learning. Now, it doesn't have to be standing up in front of the entire faculty. It could just be that they're sitting in a PLC meeting. And so this idea that there's change a coming, right? And that there are different change agents that are both a challenge and potential future. So, and these could both be systemic, system focus and people focus, but they're all sort of leading to this reconstruction idea. And so within this, so these are all of the different themes. And then when combined with these themes with the discussion with the literature review at the beginning of the paper, we combine these themes into a discussion section, which Katie is going to talk about.
So in the discussion, we have our friend here who's juggling balls. And we found that from the study, the themes kind of come together to show with the literature in the field that there's 3 main implications to take away from the study. The first one shows that our findings demonstrate the benefits of targeted professional learning in action. We know from research in the field already that when professional learning is done with fidelity, there is a positive effect on teachers' beliefs and practices. And this study supports those findings as these teachers were able to dive into culturally responsiveness, equity-focused gifted targets, and then turnkey them into their schools. As our GRT coordinator was able to talk about, she felt that there was a direct growth but from her teachers receiving the professional learning and their knowledge and advocacy within the classroom. The second implication that we should take away from this is that the time for change is now. We know that research is there to show us that there's a benefit of targeted professional learning. The question sometimes becomes, when should we start our professional learning in equity? When do we start restructuring our gifted programs and targeting different issues because we have system problems? And the findings here is really now's the time. With all these changes, we need to just dive in, right? So the best time to start is now, right? And what are we going to do next year? So when we think about the tenets of gifted and talented critical race theory, the here and now, this is the right time for our transformation. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, Dr. Angela here has a great paper that you should dive into. The final big takeaway from this study is that we have to balance leadership with empowering our teachers for change. We found that leadership, the structure, and the community are essential to empowering our gifted resource teachers as leaders in this change process. The coordinator that we were working with was a strong leader, but the leadership can only go so far to empower our stakeholders. So we really need this professional learning that's empowering our teachers to go into the classrooms and to be change agents in the classroom. So the study, I think, has some great things that came out of it um, that are hopeful for our future in gifted education.
So please reach out to us if you have any questions, thoughts, comments. You can see again, this is the slide that we shared earlier. The top right is one of the earlier iterations of the model is in the Best Practices for Professional Learning and Teacher Preparation book. That's volume 2. The first article that came out of some of our validation studies is in the Roper Review. Then the book that is a very practitioner friendly. It's part model, but probably 2/3 strategies of how to implement the model is empowering gifted educators as change agents. That's from Routledge, and then the article that this study is talking about, the one that we specifically talked about today about the gifted coordinator, is in the Journal for the Education of the Gifted. This screenshot is, looks like volume 46, number 2, and I believe it is going to be in volume 46, number 3. I'm not 100% sure. It's just already gone to copy editing, so I think it's going to be in number 3. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We love to talk to people. And that's it. Everyone, have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of your week, evening, year, month, and all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you.